press briefing at Luthuli House. Pule Mabe speaking.
And would have seen in the news this morning a report of the Integrity Commission arising out of its interaction with the Secretary General of the African National Congress. We have noted the circulation of such report on various social media platforms and what appeared to have been a leaked report. We are aware of that report as members of the National Executive Committee. Of course, the ANC has got its own internal processes. There is a way in which information that comes to the attention of the ANC ought to be processed. You would also recall that the Integrity Commission itself would have issued a statement last week outlining to the public and members of the media how it is going to deal with this, even explaining that at the conclusion of the hearing, they will communicate to the people of this country, members of the ANC, that the process has been concluded, and then follow due processes which are outlined in the terms of references of the Integrity Commission. And those terms of references are quite directive and instructive on what needs to happen when the Integrity Commission concludes its work. It compels the Integrity Commission to file such reports with the officials of the African National Congress, who will then process, and then ultimately with the National Executive Committee. Members of the ANC, regardless of whatever positions they occupy in the organization, enjoy every right of being a member. This includes tabling or raising their own appeals with the National Executive Committee of the ANC once such processes are followed. You'll also remember that in our own August statement, we did indicate that the national officials of the ANC will work on developing guidelines around how the step-aside notion is to be executed and carried forward. All that work is in progress. The expectation is that early next year, when the National Executive Committee meet, because it did indicate, so the process of the ANC don't change halfway. We've already outlined what needs to happen. Next year, in January, we're expecting to receive those guidelines from the officials. We will also now formally, as a structure, receive reports, including those of the Integrity Commission, having been processed according to how process of the ANC are undertaken. We felt that we should engage in this way so that we give clarity to members of the media on how the ANC is carrying forward with all of this. The Secretary General remains the SG of the ANC and expected to do the work that an SG of the ANC is expected to be doing. The National Executive Committee of the ANC is fully aware of processes that are to be undertaken. The last NEC that we had, where the NEC was closed by the President, whose closing was made open to the media, did outline what is going to be happening going forward. The Secretary General himself subsequently addressed the media in a press conference outlining resolutions of that National Executive Committee, including talking to this specific matter and how it is going to be undertaken, having volunteered himself to appear before the Integrity Commission, something that the ANC went out to commend him for. So where we are, we will interact with reports when they are formally tabled. We will actually call on members of the ANC and everyone else who occupies a position of responsibility in the movement to desist from leaking information that might otherwise sponsor divisions in the organization. Give the ANC the necessary space to deal with issues that are before it prudently and in the most responsible manner. The national officials of the ANC are capable of providing leadership on all matters that are before the ANC, and all of us in the NEC have got a duty and a responsibility to steer forward the Unity and Renewal Project. We've been seized with that since we came out of the 54th National Conference, and we are going to continue on that trajectory. So this should assist yourselves in the media and many others who will be following on this broadcast how the ANC is handling all of this. Just yesterday, we welcomed the announcement by the President of the Republic, who's also the President of the ANC, on the lockdown regulations which are seeking to protect and preserve lives. So even as we speak on this issue, it's important to remind our people to continue following on the safety precautions, health protocols, to make sure that we continue to fight this pandemic, so that later on when we all rise, we could have a much more healthier country that is able to confront challenges ahead. So if there are any other issues that you may want to raise or ask, you are welcome to do so.
Mr. Mabe, Sangela from the SABC. What has the Secretary General's response been upon realizing the lead Integrity Commission report recommending that he step aside, knowing very well that he in the past has said that he would never step aside unless if a special national conference is called and the branches of the ANC tell him to do so? What has been his response if you've had any engagement with him?
Mr. Mabe, you said that the NEC is capable of providing leadership. The Integrity Commission's report, beyond adjudicating on the Secretary General's presentation to it, has gone a step further and severely criticized the NEC, describing it as paralyzed and saying that the highest decision-making body between conferences is responsible for the increasing lack of trust by the very people it purports to lead. And then goes further by saying it's concerned that the NEC is using legal opinions to avoid implementing the resolutions and that they are now perceived not to be able to act against the Secretary General because they themselves are compromised. This is a scathing criticism of the NEC ahead of the NEC considering the Integrity Committee's report. How does it impact on the NEC considering the report? What is the response to this criticism?
It's Yanda Noble from Newsroom Africa. It seems to me you're saying the Secretary General is going to stay put until those guidelines are completed, but this report says with immediate effect, and in fact they quote then the August NEC meeting. So immediate effect, when is immediate effect for you as the ANC, for the SG to step aside, because it's quite clear. But also, just linked to what my colleague Samgelo was asking about, has he then offered to step aside, because the integrity report speaks about the negative image of the ANC and the perception that the NEC is unable to implement its own resolutions. So what has he said? Because he's also in that NEC. Surely then he should volunteer to step aside.
Sorry, Pule, just to add there, could you confirm that you believe the document was leaked? Because it does appear to be a statement which is not addressed to anyone.
Mr. Mabe, just the last one. In that report, the last paragraph of it goes to Rule 25.70 of the ANC Constitution, which says you as NEC members, if Mr. Magashule resists to step aside, you can then enforce Section 25.7 of the ANC Constitution and suspend the immediate effect of Secretary General. Would the ANC be going in that recommended approach by the Integrity Commission to the ANC?
Well, colleagues, as outlined earlier, and I thought we are interacting just to give clarity. The National Executive Committee of the ANC, at the right time, it will engage and interact with reports that comes before it. And if the NEC wants to pronounce itself on such reports, it shall do so. As matters stand, the National Executive Committee of the ANC has not sanctioned the distribution of any report, none whatsoever. But it is aware of the existence of a report from the Integrity Commission. It will, as a structure, when that report comes to it formally, interact with the report and express itself. I think it's only safer to give the NEC that space. So what is important here is that the NEC is not denying the existence of an Integrity Commission report. But the NEC then says that with a report existing, it will formally deal with such once it has interacted with it. The ANC is a very big organization that takes itself seriously. Immediately the ANC wants to enter the space of interacting and giving opinion on reports whose distribution it did not sanction. It runs the risk of formulating a view outside meetings. Ourselves as spokespersons of the ANC have got the responsibility to speak and pronounce on decisions of the structure called the National Executive Committee. Hence, when we started here, we reinforced decisions taken by the NEC as it relates to this specific matter. That approach has not changed. We are going to follow exactly that route. You are available yourselves in the media. If there are developments that require us to have an interaction, we will do exactly that. So Zianda, it doesn't arise in the ANC that the report will be found out there without its own sanctioning, without the structure having sat down, and that immediately becomes a decision. We're not a stop-and-go movement. We take ourselves quite seriously. We've got processes in the movement. So we've got to deal with these things according to those set out processes that have existed for a period of time. I mean, we've existed for over 100 years. If the ANC could not be paying due regard to its own processes, the organization would have collapsed. So each and everything that comes before us, in the manner that we deal with it, we must be seen to have followed process of the African National Congress.
So according to your own process then, Mr. Mabe, surely does that not mean that possibly according to your process that a special NEC needs to be called to deal with this matter given the seniority of the Secretary General?
Well, the African National Congress has got a calendar, and its calendar outlines when its meetings are to sit. You know, it's almost like how we operate in a newsroom where you have got diary meetings in the morning and all of that. So you're not suddenly just going to call a special diary meeting because some staff member there leaked something. It doesn't happen like that. We've got a calendar of meetings. We're going to follow that calendar. That's how things are processed in the ANC. There's never been a need to convene a special NEC to look at what is leaked. We've got protocols, we've got processes in the African National Congress. The media and everybody in society must be seen respecting those processes. We do not infringe ourselves on how other organizations run their own operations. It would be unfair. I mean, as I sit here, I've already been given my calendar for next year. I know, for instance, that the first NEC, it's a special NEC that has got to deal with January 8. I mean, we normally invite yourselves. Then we agree on the content of the statement. That's what we assist with now. The DSG of the ANC is out in Limpopo to make sure that they do site visits at the venue and all of that. Comrade Nomvola's team in organizing are already working on making sure that there is sufficient connectivity for us to run those activities next year. Afterwards, once we have approved the statement, members of the NEC then go to the ground to do the necessary mobilization, depending on the format that we shall have agreed for January 8, on how we then undertake such activities. The very same January, just before the end of the month, then we convene a Lekgotla. Afterwards, we'll have a normal NEC. It works like that. It doesn't change.
All right, ANC spokesperson Pule Mabe there addressing the media, speaking about that Integrity Commission report, saying the NEC has not received it. They're not going to respond to leaked reports and things that are out. There's processes that the ANC follow, and as soon as those processes are followed, they will update the media. It's time now for us to say goodbye to our SABC3 viewers. A very good afternoon. We'll see you tomorrow from 1 o'clock Central African time on SABC News. The briefing continues.
Before the new year and January 8th. And then secondly, what's the ANC's comment on its structures commenting on this report in public, such as the MKMVA? Is that allowed or should that not happen?
Well, under normal and fair situations, that the report itself should not have gotten to where it got to. I think the first question to ask is, how did that report land out there? So when reports are out there and people decide to make whatever assertions, on things that arrived there with us not even knowing how they did arrive, it will be unfair of us to want to enter that space. So we don't even have to enter that. We are following ANC processes. We're following, so I don't know what's urgent before Christmas. Christmas is on the 25th every year. So this report is not going to change the date of Christmas. So it's no crisis. Tomorrow is Reconciliation Day. The report doesn't change that. The first is New Year's Day. So the calendar is as we know it. Nothing has changed on the calendar. So let's just follow those and allow the ANC to follow its own processes. You know, I know that, we're a very big, dynamic organization. Our activities attract public interest because we're also the governing party. But even with that, we must be allowed the space to follow through our own processes. Because if we're not loyal to our own processes, who's going to take us serious? We have outlined these processes to yourselves. So how do we now have to change the very process we've outlined halfway and want to introduce new things and expect society to still accord us that respect? It cannot be.
Have you spoken to Mr. Magashule, you as Pule Mabe, and if so, what has he said to you? Is he willing, has he read the report? Or what is his reaction if it's going to?
Well, Zianda, I wouldn't want us to enter a space of what I've already explained to you, of wanting us to descend into the arena of something that the structure of the ANC called the NEC and the officials have not processed. We speak to the Secretary General of the ANC every day. We have to. We account to the SGO. So I've got the responsibility on a daily basis to speak to both the SG and the DSG. You know, when issues come out there which affect the organization and all of that, we have to take them through, agree with them in terms of how we are going to enter the space and communicate on those issues. So we take ourselves serious as an organization. We understand the responsibility and role that we're expected to play out in society.
Mr. Mabe, has any of the ANC officials had an engagement with you on this particular report, particularly the Secretary General, and what was the official's response? And let me rephrase it as well. Have you had an engagement with the ANC President on this report which could actually deepen contradictions and divisions within the ANC, as said in the closing remarks at the National Executive Committee by the President?
Well, Samkero, I realize that the temptation to want to know the interaction and how we talk to comrades. No, you shouldn't worry. We interact a lot with officials. We do it all the time. So you shouldn't worry, you know. Your time will come, comrades, when you want to resign from the media to go and stand at our branches. Then you will begin enjoying some of these rare privileges. So I think we should leave it at this point. And thank yourselves for having had time to come through and engage with ourselves. If there are developments that require us to invite you to give you further bites or any other update on the matter, we shall do so. Otherwise, you must go and have a restful festive, Gavin. Christmas dates have not changed. It's still on the 25th. So you must all go and enjoy and make sure that you stay safe this festive.
So you are saying that the work doesn't stop with this report by the Integrity Commission that the SG must step aside?
And are you not concerned, Pule, about the reputational damage? The more you don't say anything, the more you are actually giving credence to what the Integrity Commission report says, that there's a perception that the ANC does not want to deal with its own resolutions and implement them. You're saying you've got your own calendar, that's fine, you have your own processes, but the issue here is about the image of the ANC, which continuously, it's degenerating at this particular rate. Are you not concerned at all with that?
Well, I mean, if we were not concerned, we would not have stated these things in our own statement. You see, Zianda, it's quite unfortunate that we are not saying the things that the media might want us to say. but we are outlining to you ANC processes, and those processes ought to be respected by all. You know, I mean, what kind of an organization is that goes and outside a formal meeting want to pronounce big decisions? We can't do that as the National Executive Committee. The IC, yes, correct. The IC has done its work. We have interacted with its own report on various other social media platforms, unsanctioned by ourselves. We too would have also seen the report through our own NEC platforms. They are then processes of the ANC that are supposed to be undertaken. The very statements we issued out to the media did outline those processes. So we can't be disloyal to the things that we've outlined to the public. We can't. Now we say this is how the ANC processes are going to run. Now, halfway through, we change the very things that we outlined to the public. No. I mean, we have heard the story of reputational damage and all of that, and very often the story is being repeated by the media. I can tell you now, we've had by-elections. Let me make my point. We've had by-elections just last week. We do understand that the public want to see us acting, being hard on corruption, being loyal to our own resolutions of conference and all of that. But the leadership of the movement always makes themselves available whenever there are accusations to provide the necessary clarity. The SG himself volunteered to appear before the Integrity Commission to give his own account and version of events there. The NEC is going to sit, formally interact with the report and together with the IC itself on whatever work that they would have done. And the NEC will then emerge with its own decisions and pronounce out to the public. I think that is very important that the ANC is given that space to work like that. The ANC can't now halfway through change its own processes and introduce something else, because it must be seen to be responding to issues of image and reputational standing.
So, Mr. Mabe, you are saying that you are defying the recommendation that the SG must step aside with immediate effect.
Defying where? We are defying social media. Because it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. There is no. The Integrity Commission knows ANC processes. It's not us. It's not the NEC who took the report out there. I think to avoid us having to repeat the things that we've already answered, and journalists trying hard to make sure we contradict ourselves, I suggest we stop it at this point.
Mr. Mabe, do you have one last question?
Yes.
And firstly, we don't speak about reputational damage. The Integrity Commission report also touches on that. Nevertheless, as you sit here right now, would you define what's happening, the leaking of the Integrity Commission report and things that have been said? Do you see this as a crisis within the ANC?
Well, you see, Sianda, just on that question, the very statement we issued last week spoke about communications protocols and called on all our members to use the relevant platforms of organization to be able to deal or raise whatever issues that they may have. It is a bit of a worry that big reports like those would find themselves out there on social media platforms and all of that. Now, creating what could possibly become a communications crisis for the African National Congress, where we now have got to think through a crisis communications plan, doesn't help us. But if these issues are handled in a candid manner, the leadership structure of the ANC is allowed to follow through on the issues, then it's much more easier. The message of the ANC would come out in a more coherent manner. So communications, if not managed well, could also create a crisis for the organization. And that's why we emphasized the issue of protocols. It's there in our own statement. So I suggest that we stop it at this point. It's very important that we do so. Otherwise, we're going to keep on repeating ourselves. Thank you very much for coming. Once more, go and have a restful festive. It's important.
The Integrity Commission report doesn't change the date of Christmas.
No, it's important. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. When are we switching off the lights now that we... with the media, when they are
Right, quite an exasperated Pule Mabe there, trying to end that press conference multiple times, saying to journalists that although there have been reports of this Integrity Commission recommendation that Ace Magashule step aside, the NEC has not received that IC report and it has not interacted with that Integrity Commission report, and therefore it cannot make a decision, saying that the ANC doesn't pronounce on things that are leaked to the media. Also asking, Pule Mabe asking for an end to leaks coming out of the ANC, because normally due process should have been that IC report goes to the NEC, is deliberated on, a decision is made, and then the media is informed. Of course, that didn't happen. Journalists sparring with him over the course of the last half an hour or so, wanting answers, asking, is there not reputational damage that the ANC is facing due to not acting according to those reports? And Pule Mabe repeatedly saying that they are not going to act, responding to a question from Samkele Maseko, our political reporter, on things from Twitter or leaks. So that was that media briefing from Luthuli House.